In this module, we're going to talk about installing and managing web application proxy servers or WAP servers, and this is relevant to Windows Server 2012 R2. If you have a previous version of that, we're going to look at installing what's called the ADFS proxy. So either way, it's going to provide us a level of protection from our external users when they're trying to access our ADFS servers. And we do that by setting up a demilitarized zone or a DMZ. So what I want to do in this module is discuss about 5 different topics. The first one is going to be what the WAP server is all about, a little bit of an overview of the WAP server. Then we're going to walk through the steps for installing the ADFS proxy server. We're going to look at installing WAP, the Web Application Proxy Server, on Server 2012 R2, and we're going to compare those steps to installing ADFS proxy on a Windows Server 2012 or older. So that way you have an understanding of the difference between the two. And then we'll wrap it up by looking at ways that we can customize the ADFS login page to give it a little bit more of a personal or a company look, smell, and taste. So I want to begin by leveling the playing field to make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking about what a web application proxy server is all about. What we're going to see here is that a WAP server actually provides a few different pieces of functionality or features in our ADFS environment. For instance, it enables accessibility to ADFS from outside of the company network for our external users. It also functions as an ADFS Federation server proxy, and it provides reverse proxy functionality for web applications inside of your corporate network to enable users on any device to access these applications from outside of the corporate network. In addition to that, this WAP server resides in the DMZ, a demilitarized zone, and it should not be in the domains. So this is one of those machines that should not be domain joined. And we'll use the same SSL certificate as we did with our ADFS server. And similar to ADFS, we're going to use a two-phase approach to configuring the proxy server. We're going to begin by installing the proxy role, and then we're going to configure the proxy service. Sounds very familiar because that's what we did when we installed ADFS. Lastly, what operating system that we are installing it on is going to determine what configuration steps that we're going to have to take during the installation. And speaking of steps, let's walk through these. We're going to first review to understand our ADFS deployment. Do we even need a web application proxy server or any type of proxy server? And that will depend on our ADFS deployment and where our users are coming from. If we do decide we need a proxy server, how many do we need? I always suggest at the least of 2, so we have that redundancy. Determine if you're using a standalone or a Federation server proxy farm will be part of your research before you deploy your proxy server. We'll then determine where the proxy servers are going to be created. We're going to determine if we're going to use domain joined proxy servers, and most of the time that's a no-no, but we'll look into that. We're going to update DNS to access the proxy servers in the DMZ. And of course, we have to obtain and install the SSL certificate on your proxy server. We'll then kick off phase 1 of the installation of your proxy server by installing the proxy role service. We'll follow that up by configuring the proxy service role on your proxy server, and we'll wrap it up by verifying the proxy server was started using the event viewer. And hang tight with me and I'll show you the exact number you're looking for within the event viewer. Before we start talking about the installation of the proxy server, remember Windows Server 2012 R2 and Windows 2016 are going to use the remote access role called the Web Application Proxy or WAP. Prior to Windows Server 2012 R2, it was called the ADFS proxy. In fact, prior to Windows Server 2012 R2, it was referred to as ADFS 2.0 Federation Server Proxy.